guys, I'm Alyssa Alvarez, and I'm here with Jonas. Uh, I'm a front-end developer at Amagi, and today I guess I'll be interviewing Jonas, who is essentially, introduce yourself, Jonas.
Hi everyone. I'm Ceferino Villareal, but I'm also called Jonas in the office. So I'm also a developer for Amagi for close to 4 years now. And today I think we'll be tackling JavaScript and front-end questions.
First off, how are you considering all this coronavirus epidemic?
Coronavirus.
Yep.
Not too bad. Actually, okay. I mean, the media's hyping it up a bit, but it's not as convenient as it used to be, because you need to get permits if you want to go out. Gyms are closed, and even the playgrounds and outdoor gyms in our condo are closed. So really have to stay indoors. But I have my video game, so yeah.
So during your 4 years with Amagi, what would you say are like the things you've learned and how you've grown, I guess, since before Amagi?
There's a lot. There's a lot. So I guess one of the things I've learned is basically to be more confident in talking. Talking with Thomas has given me a lot of practice to be able to share my thoughts in a more consistent and a more clear manner than I used to. Of course, there's a technical aspect of what I learned as well.
Right.
So went into a lot of projects, worked with a bunch of clients, and then I really had my chops. So refined through those processes. And of course, I learned more about the backend, how developers think. I think because we talk about a bunch of stuff, right? It's not just in development. We also talk about finance. We talk about psychology, cultures. There's a lot. There's a lot there. But basically, what I learned was to be a better me, both technically and as a person, also professionally. That's the gist of it.
Okay, but you're mentioning finance and philosophy and everything. Why do you think those are important in like our jobs?
In our jobs, besides the fact that we have products that are directly related to that space, it builds on top of that, because we have products that are directly related to that space. So we as developers need to understand their users, and in order to understand them, we need to know what their concerns are. So if we don't know anything about the space, we won't. I mean, maybe we could do the UI, we could do the APIs, but our product won't be as effective as it should be. And like if we had insight into where their actual concerns and what they want to see, or the actual functionalities that they want in a product, we'd be better off than not having any idea at all.
Since you started learning how to code, how do you think front-end development has changed in the past couple of years?
It's changed quite a bit. When I started, when I started with Amagi, I already dabbled with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript before, and other embedded templating engines. But since React was released, I think the time I joined Amagi, React was at 0.14.
Whoa,
or maybe it was early 15 point something.
Whoa, okay.
Because for those that are not aware, before version 15, React's naming convention was actually 0.14. Then it switched to 15.
Oh,
so and then after that, they switched to 15 point something. Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
In terms of how front-end development changed, if you're going to focus on the front end, it gave front-end developers a lot of power. I'm not saying that they the libraries that came before them didn't give the developers the functionality they needed, but React streamlined it in a way that you have JSX there, and then there's the community is just, it's big, and then the libraries and the support for them is everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Your resources and the internet, it's all raving about React. But I'm not saying that React's the only proponent to how it's changed or what caused it to change. Of course, there's also the other libraries, Angular, who's been through a lot of changes, through a lot of versions over the past 4 years. I think back then it was Angular 2. Now it's at Angular, I don't know, it's at 6 or 7. And then Vue also came out, which is sort of like React, in that it has its own templating, a way of templating things.
Right.
But it's still different. So all in all, front-end development has changed really fast over the past 4 years, and sometimes it's even it's overwhelming to when you try to catch up to everything. So yeah, there's a lot of room there to study and improve upon.
Okay, since you were talking about how overwhelming it is to catch up, how do you keep up with the latest trends in front-end development?
When I asked a bunch of our colleagues, or I think I was asked in one of our channels before, then most of the team said that they got their updates through Twitter, which got me thinking that I should probably get Twitter. But maybe that's sometime soon. But for how I actually catch up, for library specific updates, I look into their blogs. So say for React, it has its own dedicated blog for the updates. And then I watch videos on the internet, mostly just gists of like developer conferences. Anything that's new usually comes up there. And I have this plugin in my Chrome browser that basically gives me all the updates I need, which is related to programming. So it has front end, back end, databases, sometimes systems too.
What plugin is that?
It's called, let me check. It's called Daily 2.0.
Daily 2.0?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
It's a developer news curator.
Huh. I'll check it out later.
You should try it. It's really nice.
Okay, that's cool. So it's basically what, a news feed for development updates?
Yeah, and it's on your it appears on your new tab page. So
okay, that's cool.
Yeah, every day you just get a bunch of news.
Nice. Okay, so what got you into like front-end development in the beginning?
I'll be honest, I thought it was easier because you have your HTML, you have your CSS, and it's pretty isolated to that. But then when JavaScript comes in, it gets more complicated. And that was it. I thought it was easier. Turns out it wasn't. It wasn't. It's actually because one of the comparisons I usually make with front end and back end is on the front end, the technologies change, or I don't know, what's the term? The technology changes in a very fast pace, unlike in the back end. So you have your established way of doing things, and then it won't take like 2 months just to have that maybe overhauled over, I don't know, for some reason.
Okay.
And it's for the backend at least, most of the stuff you learn are transferable to other languages. So if you start with JavaScript, in Node, I could probably use the same or most of the same stuff in Ruby, Python, etc. Front end though, there's like overlapping concepts and like ideas there, but overall implementation is a bit different. So like with Angular, it has its own way of doing things, and with React and Vue.
Right. Yeah, they have a different like design concept.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time, would you change your mind and go with backend instead?
I probably would for
Okay,
my peace of mind.
got it.
No, I'm kidding. I'm still. I still code backend on my free time. Right now, I'm learning through the Ruby koans. I just finished it earlier, so
Oh,
I'll
okay.
probably refresh my Python knowledge next. But
Huh.
no, front end has been for me. Front end has been my first love, so I can't really beat that.
Yeah, I get you. Okay. So why are you learning Ruby? Is there any specific project you have in mind, or?
No, not really. I've because before I was in Amagi, I was actually freelancing, and one of the clients I had required me to learn Ruby and implement something using Ruby on Rails, and that's been a while now, about 4 years. So I was just trying to refresh my
Ah,
Ruby
okay.
knowledge.
Got
Same
it.
with Python. I had a client before where I had to use Python, and then yeah, that was close to more than 4 years now.
Huh. Would you recommend like any one over the other to someone who's just beginning?
Someone's just beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, my first language. I, I was taught in school HTML. I was taught HTML, CSS, and a bit of JavaScript in school. Then I was also we also use C, but the one language that I actually started learning by my own was Ruby. And so Ruby is a good language. It's developer friendly, so they say, and it kind of is because it kind of reads like English in some ways.
Huh.
It's rather easy to understand, and like JavaScript, it does too, or maybe it's just because I've worked with it uh, for so long now. But
Right.
Ruby, I think,
More
is
so.
nice for beginners, and maybe Python. Python is also nice. But if you're going to want to maximize whatever it is you're trying to learn, I would really suggest JavaScript so you could work both on the front end and on the back end.
How about in the past? Was there any project that struck you as like particularly interesting, and why?
Uh, yeah, I think I'm allowed to say it, but one of our clients was Split Media, and I actually worked on one of their products that is like Photoshop for with the same functionalities as Photoshop. And the product is a streaming overlay editor. And what I had to do there, it was particularly interesting because the performance was bad
Why?
because the way they set up the project, it was a React app, and then the way they set up the project, or at least the specific features that I had to work on, was that it was triggering the store changes
Right.
frequently. And then, so like with Photoshop, right, you can group objects together and nest them as far in as you would want.
Oh
And so
yeah.
they have that same functionality. And if you had that type of layering and it reaches a certain depth, it becomes laggy. And that's where the problem lied. It was interesting because I had to read through a bunch of code I didn't write, and then I had to make it faster. I had to make the feature faster. It was challenging because it was a production grade code base. It's got a lot of people using it. It was scary. It was scary. That's why. But yeah, I made it work, and I learned a lot from the people I worked with, technically as well. On my own foray into the code base, there was a bunch of bullets that I just couldn't get, but at the end of it all, it 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 clicked,
Do you
and it
think you
got
could
working.
describe what you did to make it to speed it up?
Yeah. Okay. So the problem there was if you trigger too many Redux changes at once. I know Redux has a way of batching it, but if there's too much, you get a bit of lag depending on, I guess, how fast your computer will be or the user's computer will be.
Right.
But what I did there was because, say, for the feature of the dragging feature, if you work with mouse events, when you usually listen to where the mouse is. So in the actual click event, when on the mouse down event, you'll have to start listening see the distance the distance between that point and the point where the mouse up event is triggered,
Right.
and then you calculate that. What they were doing initially was that for every movement, which means that whenever you move your mouse just the tiniest, slightest bit, it gives a tick, and that tick triggers a redux change,
Oh boy.
which is not good. And so you could imagine where the performance could lead to,
Yep.
given that type of logic. So what I did was I had them, they'd be rendering off of their own instance variables. So within the class of a specific, say,
Right.
component or widget, that's what they called it. In the class of a specific widget, I'd store their actual XY values and then their width height values. On mouse down, I'd start listening, I'd record that where the initial down was. And then at the end, I'd record I calculate for the distance. And anything in between, I just store it in their instance variable. So the only thing that's moving there doesn't is just the instance itself. Anything outside of that just doesn't change. So the Redux doesn't change, or anything relying on that on the Redux store doesn't change. So it's just isolated to that one instance.
Huh. All right.
And then the actual change of the Redux happens when the action is completed. So when the mouse up event is triggered, it'll then just send that one change request to the Redux store,
Okay.
thereby effectively reducing our Redux changes by 99.9%. But it does save up on a lot of updates.
Yeah, that makes sense. So they didn't have any need to be tracking where the mouse was at like every moment of time at every point.
Yeah, it didn't have to go to the global state.
Okay. I understand that you've led like 2 teams. How was that? And I guess what have you learned from that experience?
A bunch. So first off, what gets you to leading a team is usually your tech skills. So you'll be technically proficient and you're good at what you do. You love your craft. You improve upon it. People notice. Then when your teammates notice, they could recommend you to be a lead or some sort, or maybe management notices. So basically, what gets you there is your technical skills. What helps you succeed in the role is a different set of skills. Sure, your technical skills will still be relevant, but you'll need to. You don't have to be good upfront. You'll need to work on your communication skills, how you talk to people, how you talk to your developers, to your colleagues, to other developers, to business especially, and other stakeholders. And maybe I've seen other teams where the lead isn't actually the most technically proficient in the team, but they're usually the one that has the best comms.
As in communication?
Yeah. Yes, communication skills.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I learned that requires a different set of skills, requires a lot of patience. When you start doing managerial stuff,
Right.
you do less coding tasks, and so how you measure your actual output for the day is kind of blurred, especially in the beginning, because as an individual contributor, when you code, at the end of the day, you see how much lines you've written or what feature you've pushed to production, how many tests how much test coverage you up the project. But when you're leading a team, sure, you still have your coding tasks, but most of the time you'll be in meetings, you'll be talking to people, you'll be collaborating with other teams, coordinating whatever your members needs are with another teams to your members. So there's a bunch of talking there. That's why your communication skills has to be on point, or if it's not, it's going to be forced to improve. Otherwise,
Okay.
you might fail because you'll have to take on different like mindsets. When you're a developer, you'll just worry about code. You'll worry about your requirements. You just want to make sure that you have all your dependencies set up before you write code, and then you should be good. But when you're a lead and you're acting like a middleman for business and the developers, what I mostly do is whenever I'm talking to business, I'm in the mindset or a frame of mind where I'm more concerned about the developer's concerns in order to represent them in the conversation, especially if they're not there. And if I'm talking to the developers, I'll be more concerned about the concerns of the business because there's no one to represent them. It would be great if they're always there at the same time, and that happens. That happens quite a lot. But the problem there is not all developers are good at translating. It's not exactly jargon, but how they speak to other developers. Other developers would probably understand it, but business wouldn't. And so bridging the part where you translate whatever the developer is saying to the business in a way that business understands it. So basically it's putting it in layman's terms so that's easier for business to digest. And then same thing from the business side to the developers, because what usually developers hear is that, let's say I'm business, I want this feature, and then just developers would understand that as, okay, if you want something very big, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. When business actually wants something specific, but they don't know how to technically implement it, and they're not as familiar as scoping it in for you. That's why, from the developer's perspective, you have to ask a bunch of questions to make it smaller, to scope it in a way that it's ready to be worked on.
Okay, thank you, Jonas, and I hope you keep safe.
Thank you. Thank you as well. Be safe, Alyssa. I will miss you guys. Bye.
We'll miss you too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.